Did you really think you could destroy this ship? She's defied space, time. She's been to a place you couldn't possibly imagine. And now, it's time to go back.
I know. The hell?
No, nothing. Hell is only a word. Reality is much, much worse.
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be? It's the Ruined Childhood Podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters! And yes, on this episode, we are traveling through space, less so fighting among the stars, and more for our sanity as we discuss Paul W.S. Anderson's 1997 Haunted House in Space film Event Horizon. But first, Dan, it's been a minute. How are you?
Yeah, it has, hasn't it? I'm doing well, John, and how are you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty well. You were out of the country. You were in Spain.
I was, yes, I was on the continent. Well, not on this one that I'm currently on. I was on a continent.
We're all on a continent.
Yes.
Well, welcome back to America. It's good to be able to record again. It's so funny because we're just shy. This is episode 199, and so it's kind of like, oh, couldn't even just close it out before we had to take a little hiatus, but here we are.
I know. It's been so like, yes. All right. We just need to get down to it. Just episode 199. And, and then, full disclosure, it's Saturday, August 5th right now. We were going to record earlier this week, but I have kids and kids get sick.
Yeah.
John has kids as well. Yeah. So if it's, I guess, not one or the other right now, I've got both the baby, the 1-year-old.
He's
and
not
the
a baby
9-year-old.
anymore. He's a toddler.
I mean, he's a toddler, but he also still just cries randomly and wears a diaper.
That's true.
And he speaks his own language. There is some English in there, and he does have some English words, but most of his language is it's a language I don't know. It's a language with which I'm not familiar. I'm not going to say it's his own made up language, but you know what? I'm not going to project that.
Well, I mean, perhaps it's actually Latin, and he could converse with the space demons in Event Horizon.
It could be Latin. It could just be English backwards. So it's been a while. Catch us up on what you've been watching.
Oh, what I've been watching. I kind of feel funny talking about all the things that I've been watching since we are, not that I am a member of the Writers Guild or SAG-AFTRA, but we are recording this during the striking time where members of those organizations are not allowed to promote their projects. So I kind of feel funny about talking too much about new things that are out or anything that, is...
I'm going to say...
well, I am a member of the Producers Guild, and we, stand in solidarity.
All right. I will talk about... Because also some of the things that I've caught up on are things, that if people who have listened to this podcast know that I frequently don't have much of an answer to the what have you been watching recently question, and John frequently makes recommendations to me both on the podcast and off the podcast, so I can certainly reference some things that were made previously. And would it make you feel more comfortable if I referenced them vaguely but specific enough?
You do what you're comfortable with. You are not a member of a guild or union that specifically connects to the entertainment industry.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with the most recent recommendation you made to me was to check out Yellow Jackets.
That is a fact.
So I've been working my way through season 1 of Yellow Jackets, which is a fantastic series that everyone working on should be getting paid their due and then some for.
Absolutely, yeah.
There are some things about it that I have to throw a little eye roll at. Part of the show takes place present day, and then part of it takes place in 1996, and it's set in New Jersey, which is where John and I both grew up and, approximately the same age as the characters.
True.
They're high school students in 1996, so that makes them slightly younger than me, slightly older than you. Anyway, the establishment of setting is so sometimes obvious. Like there was one line in an episode that before I then had second thoughts about it, I was just like, oh, wow, that was like, that writer is like, how much exposition, how much can I establish in one line? Because it was a line about going to see Oasis at the Meadowlands.
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of like, if you're from the 90s and from New Jersey, you know that, okay, it was known as the Meadowlands Arena before it was then the Continental Airlines Arena. And now I don't even know if it still exists.
I've still heard it being referred to as the Meadowlands.
But I think that people who reference it as the Meadowlands are people who remember it as the Meadowlands. It's also in that area of the Meadowlands, but it was the Meadowlands Arena, and then it was the Continental Airlines, and then I forget what it became after that. But anyway,
You felt like they were referencing it as that name just to further cement the time and place?
Well, and also like the credibility of, we didn't just throw a dart, like we didn't just call it New Jersey.
But they could have gone for the Garden State Arts Center.
Right. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Not yet. I mean, you got characters going to Rutgers, and it's in a less, I know Sopranos did, was kind of similar, but Sopranos, it always felt more natural.
Sopranos also took place in like present day for when it was made.
Right.
So they didn't have to like also build in the credibility of what something had been called at we didn't have to make time.
And then they followed it up with a line about like, oh, she'll never get to hear Wonderwall again. So it was like, we're not just talking Oasis vaguely, we are talking very specific, what's the story, Morning Glory era Oasis, 1996. But it's funny because I listen to these lines and I'm like, they sound so fake and sound so intended to just establish this, setting. But I'm like, but wait a second, like maybe someone would say that. Like, I
wasn't thrown by any of that.
No, it's something that just made me think, and it made me think about like, I'm like, yeah, it sounds kind of like almost hackish in terms of the writing. But then again, like, wouldn't a high school student in 1996 who was dealing with like, the loss of a friend, maybe say something like that? Not necessarily the loss of a close friend, but like someone they knew, and just be like, well, this is what I knew about this person. They had tickets to go see Oasis because they fucking loved Oasis and loved the song Wonderwall. Yeah. So anyway, I'm just throwing that out there because I really have no other venue.
I wasn't thrown by any of that, I clocked it, but it's not like I wasn't.
I wouldn't say thrown by it. It was just something that made me,
if they really wanted to show their cred about being in New Jersey, they could have been like, oh yeah, I just, right before we got on the plane, I had a sloppy Joe. And they'll just be like, oh, did you have it with roast beef or turkey? And then, kind of going into the fact that New Jersey in one particular part has a different kind of sloppy Joe than everywhere else in the world.
Yes, exactly. Sloppy Joes are just classier. Yeah, anyway, that was good. I also watched the first season of Severance, Apple, and was really intrigued by that. Really enjoyed that. Of course, keeping up with Righteous Gemstones. And I went to the movies for the first time since February 2020.
Oh my God, blows my mind that you haven't been.
Now, this is going to segue us into this. This is going to segue us into something that you wanted to talk about.
Well, there are a couple things that I wanted to talk about.
Well, but this is all right. So anyway, I'll bring it up, and then if there's
an order to which I wanted to bring things up.
John, I'm going to put the bait out there.
Okay.
If you bite, we'll go with it. If not, don't worry.
Okay.
was when John and I and our brother Scott met up in Austin, Texas to hang out. Little did we know it would be, our last hurrah before, pandemic.
Sure. Yeah.
There was we had some inclination of that, but anyway, on that trip, we went to one of the Alamo Drafthouse locations and saw the film 1917. And I over the years have said, if that's my last movie in the movie theater, that was a good one to see.
Yeah. And a great experience as well. And there are two different ways that I could see you teeing me up for some of the things that I wanted to talk about, because one of them, and I'm going to do the more somber one second. The first being, okay, so you see the movie 1917 in February of 2020 in Austin, Texas at the Alamo Drafthouse. I put out a book that you all can order on Amazon. It's a link to it is in our link tree. It is called My Year in Movies, 365 pages of cinematic exploration. And it is a journal for people to clock a year's worth of movies, whether you're watching it at home or going to a movie theater. And if you are going to a theater, there is a spot where you can tape a ticket stub in there, or attach it however you want. And it's a place where you can write down when you saw something, where you saw something, what your thoughts were, and who you saw it with. So it would be fantastic if you all could go on our link tree in the show notes, and we can also post it on our social media, but you can buy it. It's just through Amazon, and it would help us out a lot. Full disclosure, I've been unemployed since early May. So we are releasing this in August. And so, to kind of keep me busy, I've been working on these little side projects, putting out things like these little books, and all help is appreciated, and it helps support the show as well.
And what a fun way to kind of keep track of movies. And it's not like by buying this you're committing to watching a movie a day for a full year.
But you can challenge yourself. You can make that happen.
And you know what? I don't think there's any real rules to this. If you want to be retroactive, if I want to go back in and put in when I saw 1917, I want to add that in. Sure, absolutely. Or actually, John, it would be perfect for me to start my journal with the first movie I've seen since then.
That's true.
Which we'll be talking about on an episode
upcoming
soon.
episode, yeah.
So anyway, I'm going to throw it out there that I saw a movie, and I saw another movie. I saw two movies in the theater in the past week plus, because I saw Oppenheimer.
Right on.
The other night. So, and, of course, everybody should go and, if you're interested, see it, and draw your opinions from that. I, for one, I felt that there was the potential for perhaps for not more, but a little. Have you seen it, John?
I have seen it.
You have seen it. So we could certainly talk about it off quote unquote off air.
Or perhaps we'll have an opportunity to talk about it on an upcoming episode.
Yeah, who knows? If we do Fat Man and Little Boy, I guess.
Sure.
The only other movie I can think of that was made about the Manhattan Project and Oppenheimer, because the movie The Manhattan Project is not about that Manhattan Project. Right. Anyway, so that's three things tie this last weekend to that trip to Austin.
Right.
The second, hold on, because also on that trip, and this is what was so bizarre, because it's like in threes. So because on that trip, that was also the last time that I saw in person one of my best friends. He's been a guest on the show, talked with us about Back to the Beach, Ray DeJohn.
Oh, cool.
So Ray DeJohn and his family were in Seattle for a few days. So this past Friday, the day after I went to the movies for the first time since Austin, saw Ray for the first time since Austin. And
also, we talked a lot on the Back to the Beach episode about Connie Stevens. I happen to see Connie Stevens in an episode of Murder, She Wrote that I watched the other day. So look at that.
Of course, John. Wow, you should have that. Should be that should be another journal you should sell on Amazon. Just like I watched Murder, She Wrote. Who were the guest stars I saw?
Oh, and I've been putting together like bingo cards and stuff like that for my watching experience.
I didn't even intend this, but Back to the Beach provides us another connecting point here.
Oh, absolutely, it does.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're there. So on our trip to Austin, that's when Dan and our brother Scott and I got together and recorded an episode of this podcast that was focusing on the cinematic and television universe of Pee Wee Herman. And anybody who's listening to this podcast probably is aware that Paul Reubens passed away this past week, and also made an appearance in Back to the Beach. And not that we need to go into a huge diatribe, because we did that on our Paul Reubens episode. And so we just encourage everyone to listen back to that if you want to hear us talk a little bit about that. But much like so many people in our age range who, had any similarities to us growing up, just Paul Reubens made such a huge impression and was such an influence in so many things that we did. And he will be greatly missed.
Absolutely. Like, impacted a generation. Saw so many, social media tributes friends of mine posted, just kind of talking about their memories, whether it was like this was one of the VHS cassettes that we owned in the house and we watched it constantly, or watched Pee-wee's Playhouse every morning. I thought back to seeing the Pee-wee Herman show.
I didn't see that
live on Broadway, and what an experience it was to see that in person, as our fellow New Jerseyan and hometown friend Brian Farrell said. It was like Saturday morning on stage, or it was like Saturday morning all over again. And it was such a privilege to see. And he came out afterwards. It was the first night of previews that we saw it.
Oh, wow.
And, it's like I didn't get I took a bad picture of him from a good distance away, but he came out in character to greet people online. And even there's like a restaurant next to the theater where some people were eating at tables outdoors. I remember it was October, so it was still fairly nice out, and he was going over to the restaurant, and he was like going up to the windows, and it was like, just the joy, and knowing also what Paul Reubens had been through in his career, and the defamation and the everything in the early 90s that really more or less disappeared, and had made appearances here and there, small comebacks. And Paul Reubens was great to see in other characters. He's the best part of the movie Blow.
Yeah.
But just to see him as Pee Wee Herman, it was just, there was so much joy, and he brought so much joy to so many people.
Well, what's also really nice is to go on streaming services, which, by the way, they need to pay actors and writers fairly. But on the streamers where it says like people are currently watching or this is trending, you see like Big Top Pee Wee, and you see Pee Wee's Big Holiday on Netflix. And it's like, I'm so glad. I mean, Big Top Pee Wee, if Pee-wee's Big Adventure didn't exist, then that would have been such a great movie. But I feel like a lot of childhoods were maybe ruined at that time. So, but it's such a fun movie, and it's so weird, and it's so him.
Taken
and also
on its own, yeah.
And Pee-wee's Big Holiday is so much fun. I think about the opening scene where the dream sequence with the alien Yule all the time. And it's such a fun movie, and it was so amazing that happened.
I can't read, and lately I've only been reading his name in not the best context, but Joe Manganiello. I can't read his name without thinking of how Pee-wee says it in the movie.
Oh, yeah. It's so good. Well, I want to get to Event Horizon. I do have a couple things to add. Going back to our episode on Slapshot that we did last, I don't have anything to add about the movie, but we did talk about the fictitious Sports Hall of Fame. That is a real thing on that last episode. And I, was thinking a lot about who else deserves to be in there. And I came up with a little list. And I have to start that list off with a duo that is, core to the heart of this podcast. But Doug Dorsey and Kate Mosley from The Cutting Edge. They should definitely be in there.
I believe, didn't you mention that on the last episode?
I don't think so. No, we talked about The Cutting Edge, but in a completely different, not for the fictitious Sports Hall of Fame, but also in the vein of figure skating, there's Chaz Michaels and Jimmy McElroy from Blades of Glory.
Yes.
Billy and Sydney from White Men Can't Jump. Scott Bakula's character from Necessary Roughness. I looked it up. It's Paul Blake. I mean... I watched that movie a ton when I was growing up. Matt Saracen and Tim Riggins from Friday Night Lights.
Oh, yes.
Maybe even Lance Landry, because we love our Jesse Plemons.
Does manslaughter keep you out of the Hall of Fame?
Listen, we don't have to talk about season 2.
Would you put Smash in the Hall of Fame? Like, where do you stop?
I'm the Smash man.
With the Panthers. Yeah.
I forget about Smash. He was great. But he was no Saracen or Riggins. I did love the Smash. But then there's also Ernie McCracken and Roy Munson from Kingpin.
Oh, yeah.
If we're talking about ones that are from fake sports, Harry Potter. Heard of him?
Oh.
If we're also talking about fake sports, how about Coop from Basketball?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Or Reamer. And then I don't remember what the name was, but James Caan's character from Rollerball.
Yes.
And if we're going to also talk about fictitious sports, potentially we would talk about pod racing, in which Anakin Skywalker was a legend. So anyway, I just figured I'd add those to the running for the fictitious Sports Hall of Fame.
If anyone doubted John's claims of unemployment, that list should have.
Well, Dan, that brings us to Event Horizon, and we have had a lot of time. In addition to you being out of the country and me having a little extra time on my hands from being unemployed, I did a lot of extra homework for Event Horizon. But to begin, should I just go for a synopsis?
Yes.
Okay. After being lost in space for years, a massive space station called the Event Horizon reappears near Neptune. The crew of the Lewis and Clark picks up Dr. Weir, the designer of the Event Horizon, to help find out what went wrong on board. The Lewis and Clark crew discovers no survivors and a brief audio recording that indicates serious turmoil. As the crew collects supplies for their return trip, Dr. Weir pays a visit to the ship's core, an artificial black hole that gives the Event Horizon the ability to bend space-time. But what they don't expect is an evil aboard the ship that feeds on the crew's guilt, destroying them from the inside. So, Dan, was this your first time watching Event Horizon?
No.
Okay, so you've seen it before. What are your thoughts about this movie?
All right. Is it a quote unquote good movie? Do I rank it up there in the sci-fi echelon with Alien? No. But I enjoy it, and I enjoyed watching it. I feel like it's campy as hell. And I like the cast, and it's kind of like it's got actors that I'm like, hey, I'm happy to see you in a lead role, Sam Neill and Lawrence Fishburne. And
yeah, so Sam Neill plays Dr. Weir, and Lawrence Fishburne is the commanding officer, the captain of the Lewis and Clark. Other crew members from Lewis and Clark are played by Kathleen Quinlan, Jolie Richardson, Richard T. Jones, Jack Noseworthy, and Jason Isaacs and Sean Pertwee.
Yeah. Something I noticed this time, the casting of Lawrence Fishburne, because the film, I know it gets compared a lot. It's like, oh, it's The Shining in space. It also has an Apocalypse Now vibe to it.
Yeah. Which
Lawrence Fishburne, sure, that was his film debut.
Yeah, big break. Sure. And also, this is pre The Matrix Lawrence Fishburne, and you can draw a lot of similarities, at least in filmmaking styles and technologies that were kind of done, where this Event Horizon is kind of right on the cusp where things with computer graphics are taken from one level to the next, where
Yes.
you have movies that do it really well with a certain style of computer generated imagery, such as like Jurassic Park, and then you have movies like Johnny Mnemonic and The Lawnmower Man a little earlier, and then for me, I think that the computer graphics in Event Horizon, although they did do a lot with practical effects, I feel like the quality of the computer effects, at least watching it from a 2023 lens, takes away from the practical effects. I feel like it makes the practical effects look worse. And then of course, as with especially The Matrix, we kind of break into a new style of effects. It's interesting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Different inspirations there and different.
Yeah.
I mean, like the Wachowskis are, pretty bold and revolutionary filmmakers. Like not all of their films are amazing, but like you've got The Matrix, Speed Racer, not successful at the time, but man, like that's a movie that I would love to see in a theater again, because even watching it on a like TV at home was pretty stunning.
Yeah, well, whether it's a hit or a miss, the Wachowskis always put out something that's going to be interesting, and they take risks. Sometimes they pay off, and sometimes they don't.
It's bold, and they say like, look, whatever we're going to do, we're going to do this in a way that is plausible. Like they go all the way. They don't half-ass it.
That's true. And I have to say, so Paul W.S. Anderson, who is very unfortunately named, considering other Paul Andersons and the Wes Anderson, the W.S. Anderson, it's like, there's so much that it's just like, oh, this guy is just getting lost in the shuffle. But, really made his name with like the Mortal Kombat movie, and then later on did like the Resident Evil movies. And I know that for a lot of people, Event Horizon is in their top horror films. And I can understand why it doesn't do it for me in that way, but for those who this appeals to, I'm glad that it exists. And talking a little bit about the homework that I did, because when I first watched it, I was just like, this is so exhausting. I really can't believe that we're doing this. And then I watched it again with director commentary, so Paul W.S. Anderson, and it was so long ago, I forget who I think it was maybe a producer who was also on the commentary. I wish I could look that up quickly, but I feel like it was a lot of patting themselves on the back for the way that they did things and for their practical effects that they did. And it was also recorded a long time ago. It was recorded 20 years ago. So at the time, a lot of the stuff still looked a little current.
Right.
We've become so accustomed to watching things where the visual effects are more seamless than they were in the past. Talking about some of the movies that recently came out, you mentioned one of them earlier that begins with an O and ends with a gigantic explosion. And a movie that came out the same day as that, famously, those are lauded as having little to no CGI. And I feel like we're in a place right now where practical effects are king. And there's been such fatigue from superhero movies and things like that, where people are just acting in front of green screens or giant monitors that have a fully animated background. Whereas now, when you can film something on a real set with practical objects and practical effects, it's recognized a little bit more. And also, recognizing, other new movies like the Mission Impossible movies and, Dead Reckoning. Of course, there's CGI there, but a lot of practical effects. And
right.
things like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's
we know Tom Cruise really is jumping off things and flying things.
Since this is not promoting it, I will say that one of my big issues with Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is that all of the marketing for that movie was all about the stunt. And it's almost like they created the movie stunt first and then worked around the stunt. How do we get to this? How do we create a story to get us to this stunt? Him on motors. And honestly, like, compared to a lot of the other stunts he's done in Mission Impossible movies, this one didn't seem all that special to me. I'm sure that it was the most dangerous technically of them, but you know, when he's jumping around on the tops of buildings and things like that, I'm a little less impressed because, you know, we've seen him do such wild stuff where the storylines are really fascinating, whereas this one I, you know, was not crazy about.
Right. Yeah.
So
anyway, but back to Event Horizon. I haven't seen it with the commentary, but I can imagine that just because like this movie was famously kind of rushed when Paramount pushed Titanic back to December 1997, and they had a hole in their summer.
Black hole.
Yeah, they had and they were like, it could be a portal to hell. And unless we find a good movie to release. So they put out Event Horizon, and it was, I think that's the famous story behind it, is that it was rushed. And I feel like Paul W.S. Anderson feels, whether or not that this would have been the case, that he could have produced a much better film.
Well, the story about it, first of all, they think that they made an amazing movie.
Well,
however,
I mean,
it being rushed to theaters, I don't think came up at all. It was more about how the studio made them cut out a lot of time, and how if he was able to keep in 30 minutes that he had to cut out, it would have been a better movie. But otherwise, he thinks it's an amazing movie.
Oh, right. I'm saying that's. So I'm saying, I mean, people, audiences, it would have been better received, I think, is kind of the gist that I get from him.
Yeah. I mean, it was well received. I mean, we're talking about it now. It came out such a long time ago.
It picked up a cult following.
Sure. Yeah. And so
understandably.
So to talk a little bit more about some of the additional homework that I did, I also watched the Disney movie, The Black Hole, which was the first Disney movie made like for adults. And it's a very similar movie. And Paul W.S. Anderson fully acknowledges the similarities that this has to that movie. It's kind of like a combination of Solaris and The Black Hole. Dan, have you ever seen The Black Hole from 1979?
I used to watch that movie a lot. I remember at our grandmother's house in Palm Springs. I remember like renting the VHS and it having that like big clamshell case that the Disney live action movies had. And we watched Black Hole a lot.
So how much do you really remember about that movie?
I remember that there's some kind of freaky stuff. I remember like a big scary robot named Maximilian.
Yes.
I remember there was kind of like a cute little like R2D2 C3PO ripoff.
Right, because this is 79. This is when everybody's ripping off Star Wars.
Yeah. Oh, who cared though?
So I watched The Black Hole, and this is about a ship that is going to this lost spaceship that has reemerged, where there is, in this case, one survivor, and he has gone completely mad. We come to discover, and I hope I'm not spoiling a movie from 1979, but like we find out that he has essentially turned his human crew all into like cyborgs, and to serve his mission. And essentially what they do is it goes into a black hole, and it's a portal to hell. Like it's the same movie, just done a little bit differently. It's
wow.
Yeah. So Event
They
Horizon.
don't bring Sam Neill. He's already there.
He's already there, exactly. And I forget the character that
is Maximilian Schell in
yes,
it?
Which is
I feel
so
like it
weird
was
because his name is Maximilian, and Maximilian is the name of the robot. It's so weird.
Yes, that was what always got me confused, and I was like, "Am I remembering this correctly?" But yes,
and Solaris, which is another movie that's about people who go into space and they see things and they have these visions and are kind of haunted by them.
Well, and about a lost partner, a lost spouse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which Event Horizon, Sam Neill's character, he's haunted and feels very guilty about the death of his wife who took her own life. And, this being that kind of comes through this artificial black hole on the Event Horizon, it feeds on guilt, and it makes the people in its path have these hallucinations, and it makes them go completely mad. Another movie that I watched in preparation is the one other movie that describes what a black hole is by folding up a piece of paper and sticking a pen through it, and that's Interstellar.
Yes.
Which I really love that movie. I feel like the way that even though it's a very, of course they're all fictionalized, but the way that it goes into how a black hole works and the way that it bends space-time and things like that. For Interstellar, it's like the missing component is love or whatever, And
the fifth element, though.
Yeah. So I think that in order to really analyze Event Horizon, it really helps to watch all these other movies that deal with black holes and approach it from different ways. And Event Horizon, which takes more of a horror approach than all the others, like, it's a haunted house in space. It also has so much religious imagery. The ship, the Event Horizon, parts of it are directly modeled from parts of, the Notre Dame Cathedral, and it's very heavy-handed. Yeah,
it's a very gothic space thriller. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, there's like the stigmata.
Yes. It is wild. I'll tell you one other thing that bothered me about this movie. There's a character whose last name is Justin.
Right.
And they refer to him only as Justin, but it's like, I've never heard somebody with the last name Justin to the point that it's distracting when they keep on calling this one person Justin.
Well, and it's also, it would be okay if it was someone who didn't look like their first name was Justin.
Absolutely. Well, his name is FM Justin. He doesn't even have like a
Frank
name.
Michael Justin. I don't know.
Michael Justin. Sure.
Frank Michael Justin.
What was also funny is like Smitty, who's the pilot, is WF Smitty.
Well, Paul W.S. Anderson. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Jason Isaacs' character is DJ, which I don't know. But Jason Isaacs I thought was pretty great in this.
Oh, yeah. I always like Jason Isaacs. Like, he's always entertaining.
Yeah, he's great. He's great. I did feel like Richard T. Jones's character, even though Lawrence Fishburne is one of the leads of this movie, it's like there's still room for a token black character, and it's this guy.
Right. Yeah. Doesn't he survive?
Yes, he does.
Yeah. So
against all odds, he survives.
Like bucking
bucking the trend.
Yeah. And Jolie Richardson.
Richardson,
survives. Yeah.
Yeah. Or do they? I mean, there's kind of one false ending, and then, but when it goes to like the not hallucination ending, on the commentary, they say, but that's meant to lead you to believe that maybe it's come back with them. And that's just like, oh, really? Because I did not get that from that. I got that as it was just another way to get us a scare.
Right. It's like the Sigourney Weaver at the beginning of Aliens.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that Aliens, as far as horror movies in space goes, for me is always going to be the top. I mean, talking about a movie with incredible practical effects.
I mean, if we're talking about horror movies in space, Alien, there's like Alien and I can't think of what else.
Yeah. Well, I think that also when a movie like Alien, with Alien, the style of like H.R. Giger's designs for everything is way more effective than the way that things were designed. Although I did appreciate, I know that a lot of what Event Horizon does kind of pulls from 2001 as far as the spaceship design. But I did think that the look of the like artificial black hole was kind of cool. I liked that. It definitely has some cool visuals. Yeah.
It has some cool effects. It's got some stuff that's like shitty and like you were saying before, there's like kind of the digital effects that were not quite where
it's mostly
where
like things floating in space, like the zero gravity stuff.
I feel like it was a lot after like Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, which had like when like the blood pellets like floating in zero gravity. And I feel like after that, it was like, oh yeah, that was impressive. We're going to do that too. So that happened in Event Horizon. Star Trek VI is fucking amazing.
I don't know if I saw Star Trek VI.
Oh, when they say like the even ones of the Star Trek series, like 2 and 6 are legit awesome.
Well, I know I've seen 2. I know
good.
I've seen 4, The Voyage Home.
Yeah, that one's kind of a
6 or 8. Right, but I feel like there are so many moments from it that are more iconic. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's all just like, the gags. Anyway, we're talking about Event Horizon, and it's so very mid to late 90s in its casting. Jack Noseworthy. Yeah,
well, Sam Neill, who's fresh off of Jurassic Park,
at this point he's not that by 1997.
Well, when this movie's being made, I mean, it's still pretty fresh after that came out. It's still, if you think about, okay, so it's 2023 now. If you take a movie from 2019, it's still pretty fresh after a movie from 2019.
No, that's, and I was thinking, I was like, well, Lost World has already come out. Lost World comes out the same summer as Event Horizon.
Yeah, so.
And Lawrence Fishburne, who's fresh from, but even like What's Love Got to Do with It is actually, it's the same year as Jurassic Park.
Yeah, let's see. Let me take a look at his filmography and see what's going on in 97. Hoodlum. Then before that, we have Fled, Othello, Just Cause, Bad Company, Higher Learning, Searching for Bobby Fischer, What's Love Got to Do with It, 93. Yeah, so looks like he had nothing coming out in 94, but 95 had 4 movies come out. That's huge.
Yeah. That's a lot there. Like they're not like, the like A+ list stars, but like these are actors with a lot of credibility. Yeah. Like Sam Neill had, Jurassic Park, biggest box office hit. I don't think Lawrence Fishburne at that point had really had any major box office hits, but Boys in the Hood, What's Love Got to Do with It, Oscar nominated for What's Love Got to Do with It. Like you said, 2 years after this, he's got The Matrix.
Yeah.
Kathleen Quinlan, hot off of Apollo 13, and Breakdown, which comes out the same year as this. You ever see Breakdown?
Breakdown with Jack Noseworthy?
That sounds like a talk show. It sounds like
it's Breakdown with Jack Noseworthy. Yeah. I've seen it a lot recently on one of the streaming services, and I think about watching it, but I haven't actually watched it.
Worth checking out. I mean, I love seen
Kurt
it in
Russell,
years, but Kurt Russell, J.T. Walsh, man.
Yeah.
J.T. Walsh.
Yeah, I'm also looking at other Jack Noseworthy movies, and first of all, I'm seeing that he was Eric Dittmeyer in the Brady Bunch movie.
In the Brady Bunch, yeah.
So mad respect there.
U571.
U571, but also, and I've been thinking about this movie more lately than any other time ever, but the Pamela Anderson film Barbed Wire. And I've been thinking about it only because the Barbie movie and Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar should be right next to each other.
Oh,
but I wonder if Barbed Wire impacts that. I wonder how the alphabetization
alphabetically?
impacts the, because that would, so Barbie would go after Barb and Star, but
Barbed Wire
is
would
the ampersand
right between them.
Yeah, so it's like that would ruin that, that 1-2 punch if you're looking at a Blockbuster video shelf.
Yeah, no, and as an English teacher here, the alphabetization would definitely throw Barbed Wire in the middle there. But I gotta say,
could be a fun triple feature though.
Also, Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar was one of the movies available on my last flight. And although I did not opt to watch it, I just had a moment where I was like, I can always watch Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar.
I could always watch Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar. Absolutely. That's one, and I may have mentioned it on this podcast before, but while I was watching it for my first time, halfway through, I was thinking, I wish I could watch this again from the beginning, having never seen it again. And I hadn't even finished the movie.
Yes. And last thing I'll say about it, wish I could see that opening night in a crowded theater.
That one came out. Did that come out during the pandemic?
That was pandemic.
Yeah. So I don't even know if it got a theatrical release.
I think a small theatrical release, but still anyway. So funny. All right. So Event Horizon.
Yeah, as you can tell, I'm really trying hard to not talk about Event Horizon.
Is there? All right. So then, let's get down to it, John. So
let's get down to
all right. So of course, the people always ask, was there going to be a sequel? And I don't know if there was ever really a sequel in the book. So I don't know. What would you do? What you're given Event Horizon?
I was looking at, and this is just on their Wikipedia page, but there's a section for future in the Event Horizon Wikipedia page, and I'm just going to read that. So there's potential films. So in December 2011, so quite a long time ago, Paul W.S. Anderson and Jeremy Bolt stated that there have been ongoing discussions to explore additional movies that would expand the Event Horizon story in the form of a prequel and a sequel. Potential stories to be developed include following the first crew aboard the Event Horizon and their mission that led to their disappearance for 7 years, as well as a continuation film detailing the events that followed the rescue of Lieutenant M.L. Stark, T.F. Cooper, and Ensign Baby Bear Justin. Wow, I can't believe that I forgot about the whole Baby Bear aspect of Justin.
Oh, yes, Baby Bear.
By October 2020, however, after years of no development, Anderson stated that he had not returned to the property in any continuation because he did not want to take away from the experience of the original film. He didn't want to ruin any childhoods, Dan. In August 2022, so 1 year ago, Anderson reiterated that talk of a prequel and or sequel is always ongoing and stated that what has kept the projects from being a reality is his desire to preserve the original film's ambiguity. I would say your director's commentary ruined the film's ambiguity.
Right, yeah.
So there's also, just real quick, there's also a television series section that says, in August 2019, a television series based on the film was reported to be in development by Paramount Television and Amazon Studios. Adam Wingard will direct the series, in addition to serving as executive producer alongside Larry Gordon, Lloyd Levin, Jeremy Platt. Gordon and Levin previously held producer roles in the original feature film. And Adam Wingard, for anybody who doesn't know, is, from Blair Witch, Death Note, and Godzilla vs. Kong, You're Next, and The Guest. So a lot of horror-y kind of stuff.
Right.
So, on this podcast, we talk about what we would theorize could be done with this property. And I don't know, for me, a re-edit. So here's a bit of the mythology of this movie that we did not talk about. There's this 30 extra minutes, this director's cut, that did not get released that Paul W.S. Anderson claims would have made the film a lot better in his opinion. And the only remaining evidence of this was at one point on a VHS tape that had quality too poor to transfer. And to that, I would say going back in and doing kind of a remaster to the original film. And that could include replacing some of the computer animation that maybe is a little or a lot outdated. I think just cleaning things up, doing a restoration of it would be, I think, appropriate. And if there's anything that can be included that got removed with reshoots or with a lot of the newer technologies that we have to do it digitally in a way that wouldn't take you away from the experience, I think could be appropriate. I do not care for a prequel or a sequel or a television series, although I could see how a television series could work. I think that the whole idea of a space station that has an artificial black hole could be a really interesting location for a series.
Oh, yeah, agree. And I think, especially if you frame it, as like, in that horror sense, I think people will go for it.
Yeah.
Especially if you go for that, like, teens, early 20s audience. I think you'd go for it.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about Yellow Jackets before, and this is a show that's focusing on teens and the supernatural. And if you want to consider like the supernatural and the religious supernatural that that Event Horizon deals with, I think that going too far into religious mythology might be a bit of a turnoff for general audiences, but you never know.
Well, right. Yeah. Well, you can, work with that a little bit. Yeah. So, you'd focus more on, maybe not putting a name on it and calling it hell, but, focusing on the guilt aspect. And it's something like it's a black hole, but that brings people's guilts, like it manifests them or something.
Yeah.
Which is what happens in the movie. So, and that sounds fine. Like, I think that would work. Really, what I would like to see done with this movie is I would love to see some like student run theater company on a college campus or like some improv troupe, but not some New York, not Upright Citizens Brigade, but like just some, like a bunch of college kids who watched this movie really late at night and like adapted it for the stage. This is not like, not Event Horizon the musical, but like a really like shitty, like cardboard sets, but like clearly meant to evoke the movie. Something that would probably draw people's attention to the movie, but basically, kind of act it out, but using really low budget of effects and things like, flashlights and people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's the best way I can describe it, is give it the like college improv troupe treatment.
That'd be fun.
It's a cult movie, and I think it could work, but not as a Rocky Horror where you have the movie on and have people acting it out. But I'm saying like recreate everything very cheaply and intentionally cheaply. I'm not talking about the high school version of Alien that looked like legit good.
Yeah, right.
I am talking about, cardboard refrigerator boxes to build your sets and like flashlights and
Michelle Gondrafied.
Flying. Yes, exactly. Yes, but not as cute.
Sweeted, as they would say in Be Kind Rewind.
Sweated.
Have you ever seen Be Kind Rewind?
Quite some time ago.
Yeah, well, they call their versions of popular movies that they redo using all like cardboard boxes and stuff the Sweded versions.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I think that's really the only thing that would like raise my eyebrows if I saw, University of Washington, like, on this campus, oh, they're doing it at midnight. And like, our stage version of Event Horizon would be like, oh, I'm interested in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds like fun. I like that.
You know what sounds like fun, John, is what we have planned for
episode 200.
For episode 200 and a couple episodes after that. And then I feel like as we go, we didn't talk about it earlier, but your suggestion for you've got the journal for your year's worth of movies.
Yeah.
But if a podcast was meant to be weekly, a year's worth of weekly episodes, mapped out.
Yes.
Literally.
Well, we'll get to that in a few episodes. We'll talk about that more in a few episodes. But
I'm excited about that.
For episode 200 and a few after that, Dan, do you mind if I kind of explain a little bit of what we're going to do?
Please.
Okay, so on this podcast, we talk about, cult and classic movies and how we would theorize they could be brought back. Now, since we started this podcast like over 4 years ago, there have been new movies that have come out on the movies that we've covered. And so we're going to go back and revisit some of the movies that we've talked about where there has been a new film or a TV show or something like that that's come out. And we're going to see what we had suggested and also talk about what actually was done and see where things may have intercepted a little bit, see if we we're pleasantly surprised with the way that things turned out. And we're going to start off with one of our first episodes actually was Bill and Ted. So we're going to do Bill and Ted Face the Music. And we're also going to talk about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, because we did an episode just on the Indiana Jones franchise. So it's exciting.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun and looking forward revisiting a lot of those. Like you said, it's been 4.5 years.
It's wild
since we started up. So wild. Crazy.
Yeah, because this is something that we tried to do weekly, but life sometimes happens, and so what can you do?
I mean, and man, you think about the last 4.5 years, there's been a lot of life happening.
A lot of life
in
happening
that time.
Yeah.
So, but I'm grateful that we've been able to keep it up, and I'm excited to hit episode 200 and
200.
Looking forward to revisiting some of our little favorites.
Well, Dan, this is going to be an easy one, but as you head to Neptune's orbit, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.